flawless experts who have all the answers. That's not this podcast. Instead, we chat with professionals who love what they do, have wisdom to share, and can laugh at their own mistakes. I'm Mark, and I'm the host of the WorkPlay Solutions podcast. So let's laugh, learn, and discover the joy of work. Boo, boo, boo. Welcome back. We are here for part 2 of our conversation with Dr. Alan Hughes, professor of psychology, interim dean to the Charter School of Education and Human Sciences at Berry College. Dr. Hughes, as we discussed in the last episode, is an expert in visual perception and the brain and how those play together. And I looked through your CV before the interview, and one of the things that caught my attention was this idea of you did a paper on engaging students in the classroom with technology. But can you speak to that? So what's something fun that you do to engage your students in the classroom, whether that's through technological means or not? You already mentioned pirate stuff, so...
You want me to explain that project in particular, or?
One of the things we like to do is make sure that folks who are educators and trainers bring their content to life and make that as experiential as possible. So how do you liven up, learning? Mostly
just because of my presence in the room, right? Just my sheer good personality. I can start with the project because I think we do that. I do still do that. Okay. Actually, what it was is, there's all this research. So students spend a lot of time looking at their phones. So can we actually use that for some good purpose? So what we did is we designed some work using an app called 3D Brain, which allowed students to actually learn about brain anatomy, learn about brain function. It's linked to clinical science, whatnot. In the absence of having like a lab, like a wet lab, so students would look at, so in Psych 101, we would learn basic things about the brain. And so option A is students could use the book to learn about brain anatomy and learn about function, or they could use this app that would allow them to interact with it, where they could actually have rotations and see things from perspectives. So the assignments and the activities were using a worksheet designed to make use of the app to get them to engage with the material, as opposed to passively reading the textbook. And the data showed it was effective. We had lots of it was a good experiment. We were well controlled, lots of good science, and the data are the data. And it showed these actually helped them, in terms of post test evaluations, learn more about and show to demonstrate they actually learned something. Because I think it was fun, and they liked it, and it made use of something they use all the time. And we do stuff like that a lot. And that was just one example, I think.
Well, I think just even the fact that you can rotate something makes it more intriguing, being able to see it from a different angle or perspective. I think back to my days when I was a challenge course professional, and I had my ropes course certification test, and I had to identify knots and look at those knots, but I could only see them from one side, and I had to tell whether they were correct or not, and I couldn't touch them. It was like, well, no, I would never do that. And it was incredibly difficult because I could only see one side of the knot, and I couldn't feel the knot, which I always, as a outdoor person, you check the knot with your hands and your eyes. That's not super related, but I'm empathizing.
Well, there's it just wasn't my class, but I had a colleague who used Play-Doh. They would have them make brain models out of Play-Doh just to have them think about, well, how does this really fit together? Because the problem is when you look at it in a textbook, it's hard because the brain, most of the stuff that interests students, you take the cortex off, you have the midbrain and the hindbrain and all these other areas, but you can't really see any of that stuff. So let's take an example like Alzheimer's. So Alzheimer's is what they call a medial temporal lobe amnesia. So if you took by your ears, take those brain areas off and turn them sideways, that's in medial temporal lobes. And those contain all the areas that relate to emotion, motivation, and parts of memory. But you can't see that if you look on any brain picture, unless they try to take it apart and make you understand it, but it's really hard to visualize. So those 3 brain apps would allow them to see that better, to see its relationship to other structures, because it's hard to really imagine. And it worked. One year we had some sheep brains and they would dissect. In fact, we had a bunch of nursing kids come over too and would help out. But even that is hard because it doesn't look like the human brain. It has the same components, but it's not like we can't bring in human brain, so you use a sheep brain. But
you're not supposed to bring in.
Well, they get mad. They get mad to do that. It gets frowned upon, apparently. But it's not this. It doesn't look the same. It doesn't have. It just doesn't. And but as a really weird side note, when I first moved, that's not true. Right before I moved down here, there's a lady in resident when I was in Rochester, and she was retiring. Her name was Phyllis Ladrigan. And her office was beside mine when I was in Rochester at Nazareth. And she came to my office, this is like 2005 or 6, and she has this like vat, like it's about, I can't even describe it, maybe 10 inches tall, about maybe a circumference of like 12 inches, I don't know. And she says, "Do you want this?" And I said, "Well, what?" And so inside this thing is half a brain.
A human brain?
Yeah. And like, why do you have this?
Is it legal to own a human brain?
Hell if I know, but apparently it was. So it's half a brain. It's like literally, it's all in the solution and all that. And she says, "You can have this." Like, when you don't understand, why do you have this? So someone had given it to her, I don't know, and she had kept it in her office. I did the respectful thing. I took it to class, and we named it, and had a contest of who's going to name the brain. And what I said, "You guys we spent all this is like midway through the semester." I said, "We spent all the semester talking about this." This was a class in neuroscience, right? So I took a class. And I said, what's in this container used to be a person. I have no idea of its biological sex. You can't tell, not they're looking at it. And this was housed the person's emotions and regulated her memory and experiences. This was a person in this thing, right? And I said, that's weird. It's this used to be the seat of someone's experiences. Now the person's long gone. So we decided we named it. I know this sounds really pathetic. So the contest came down to 2 names. One was Skanky McNasty or Bob Saget. So that was it. So he picked Skanky McNasty, whatever. Very respectful.
I'm surprised it wasn't Brainy McBrainface.
Yeah, and it just was. I kept thinking, why? This is so weird, because it's not like it's a sheep brain. This is a half a person. Anyway, and I don't know. And the sad thing is between trying to move, you guys have moved before. It's not easy. I don't know what the heck this thing is. I have no idea.
That was my next question. Do you still have?
Nope.
Is it Skank McNasty?
Skank McNasty is what the name is. Yeah. I don't know. Between trying to pack up to move from Rochester to Georgia, something I have no idea.
Could you imagine if you got one of those moving companies that aren't up to snuff and they kept one of your boxes and found that?
It could. Well, the guy
or an old landlord.
Well, the guy that moved us down here wasn't up to snuff. He was a little shady, so he might have taken Skank. I don't really know. But anyway, there's a side note.
Thank you, Alan.
You're very welcome. Anytime.
That made my day. That's
what I'm here
Absolutely. For. Okay, a couple more questions.
Sure.
Tell us, you're an educator. Tell us of a student or former student that you're really proud of. Who are they and what did they do?
I've done this so long. It's like after a while, it's just so many people. Her name is Sarah. And Sarah was, over the last 23 years, I've met a lot of smart people. This one is probably the top 3.
Oh, wow.
For sure. And Sarah she had did research with me. She was had received a Richard Scholar, which is a grant here that provides funding for students. It gives them $5,000 to help support the research and pay for equipment and go to conferences and all that. Anyway, so she did research with me. We were looking at some things related to implicit processing of anorexia and how people perceive people with anorexia. But anyway, so long story short, what happened is she was interested, or thought she was interested, in getting a PhD in clinical psychology. And she certainly had the goods for it. In fact, when she presented her research here, we have a symposium for undergraduate research. When she presented her research here, it was as if it was a PhD student. I mean, I've never seen a college student do that. It was her. It was just amazing. Just her ability to talk and articulate and explain was not what you expect. And there's some great college students. I don't mean that, but just it was really.
It was at a whole nother level.
And so she decided not to go to grad school, but she was still interested in stuff. So she ended up going I don't remember all the steps. Went to California, got involved in powerlifting. and some other stuff like that. She applied for jobs at some places, some labs, worked at UCLA. It might have been USC, I don't remember. Again, she's phenomenal, right? Then she ends up she gets married. She moves to New York City, and she starts working, taking some classes and working at Columbia University for this ophthalmology researcher in medical school. And she's so good that they accept her last year at Columbia University Medical School, did not make her take the MCAT.
Oh, wow.
Because they thought she's so phenomenal. So here's a student who, the point of this story is that she thought she wanted to do X, did something very different, ends up going to California doing something completely different. She's not a very big person, doing powerlifting, teaching all these classes, ends up working for these top-notch research labs at UCLA/USC, one of those two, I forgot. And then at Columbia on her own initiative, she approaches this researcher, starts working with him, but it's so good, they invite her to go to medical school, and now she's in med school with no MCAT, just go.
Wow.
And again, it's an interesting story, but she is one example of just a phenomenal student who's going to do great things and change lives, no doubt.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Let's answer my favorite question. Spin the wheel of embarrassing moments. Tell us a story of professional failure where you screwed up, and what did you learn from it?
I've never failed. I'm self-actualized, Mark. I don't fail. Something that sticks out. I mean, it was a long time ago. And I was still a PhD student. Does that count?
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, I was still working and doing stuff.
Were you?
Yeah, that was me. Still short. So I was at the University of Louisville working my PhD, and I still had collaborations with my master's thesis advisor. And there was a student who had followed me, who's now in his lab working on her master's degree. And I might have said some things. I think I made a comment or something about. I think he treated her differently, and she rode lots of coattails, and she hadn't really earned anything, but she gets all this recognition. And we had this falling out, and he actually took my name off a paper, and I contributed to the paper, but he was just trying to show he's still in charge. So he takes my name off this paper, and we didn't, speak for a while. It's complicated, right? And eventually, I think we mended the fence because he was also friends with my PhD advisor. They had been at Vanderbilt together, so it was really awkward. And what I learned from that is I felt bad because here's a guy who helped me a lot, who really did a lot to help me, but that doesn't give him the right to treat me like dirt. So I have all this dissonance, well, should I just lay down and bow to him because he was my advisor at one point, or do I hold him to some standard of ethics? And in the end of the day, it all got worked out. I guess what I learned is to keep my mouth shut. And you never know what people's relationships are like, and it was complicated. And now I feel even worse because he died a couple of years later. But I went to his celebration of his life and talked and gave a speech and all that stuff because we mended. The good thing is by the end of the time we'd mended the fence, but it was really awkward, and it I don't know. That's not the great example, but it's taught me to. Yeah, at that time I was like 27, maybe 26. But along the way, there's always been cases where sometimes it's better to keep your mouth shut, and not gossip, not make comments. And especially what I do now, it's harder. You got to be really careful. You work with a lot of complicated personalities, and you have to be ethical. But I'm sure my life which my memory was better, is full of those kinds of incidences where things just happen, and you gotta learn from it, and move on. But beyond that, I can't really think of anything that's been so. Not that I haven't failed. I mean, I'm sure I've screwed ups along the way. So I'm sure I have. But I've always tried to do things with a lot of integrity and do things with a lot of sense of purpose and do the right thing. Always make the right decision and keep in mind that whatever I do is impacting somebody else, and give people some respect. And I think even if I sucked at my job, which I don't, but if I did, I think at least people would say, we know he's a pretty good guy. He's pretty easygoing. He never yells. He doesn't scream. He respects me for what I do and helps me do the best I can. I think that's important too. Okay. So, anyway.
All right. What is a question I haven't asked, but you're burning to answer?
People always ask, what do people want to be a dean?
Okay.
Right. People don't understand what we do for what we do. So what gets me up every day is I get to help people. I get to be an advocate for somebody. I get to go to bat for somebody. I get to solve a problem for somebody, because a lot of people don't have the ability to do that, or they're in a situation where they don't feel they have the power to do that, or they don't feel safe doing it. And I get to take a lot of heat for people, and that's fine with me. I have pretty thick skin, and I do my best to argue and try to get something to help somebody out and help them out of a mess and a pickle, because lots of people ask me lots of questions. And I don't always have the answers, but I do my damnedest to find it and figure out how to get this person what he or she needs. And that could be lots of stuff. But I think on a daily basis, it's about leveraging your particular position to help somebody out in a way that benefits their department, their program, gets them a stipend, gets them whatever, something that they feel like they've earned. And so a lot of my job is, I feel like that's what I do, is trying to solve problems. So I'll give you an example.
Before you give your example, can you just real briefly explain what an academic dean is and what they do?
Yes, that's a good point. So at Barry's a pretty typical example of where you have a high academic hierarchy. So you have a president, you have different VPs, and so I work for a VP that's called the provost. So she's a vice president of academic affairs. And under academic affairs, there's all kinds of different things. There's this different schools, like mine's the School of Education and Human Sciences. There's a School of Mathematical Sciences, et cetera. Each school has a dean, and each school has department chairs who work with the dean. So the dean is the managing academic officer of that specific school, who's in charge of curricular development, curricular promotion, assessment of faculty, evaluation of faculty, hiring faculty. It's basically a McDonald's manager. That's what it is. It's like a middle person, but you have to have somebody to oversee the day-to-day operations of faculty, of hiring faculty, of courses, of curriculum, of scheduling classes. That person is the advocate and the technically the officer of the school. So there are academic officers. So the provost is the chief academic officer. So the dean is an officer of that specific school, who is involved in making decisions about hiring and evaluation faculty. It's a very busy job. So that's does that make sense? That's kind of what I do. But under my school, it's complicated because it's not just we have nursing and teacher education, which is our professional programs. I have psych and kinesiology. But we also have 3 laboratory schools, which are licensed and accredited. So I have 68 staff, but half of those aren't even faculty. They're staff. They're professional teachers or preschool teachers. So my job is to work with all those different people. It's a very, diverse school with lots of different needs. So there's a learning curve for sure. That's kind of what a dean does.
Okay. And so I interrupted you before you told your story. So in light of now that we understand what a dean does, you were going to give an example.
So I do a lot of random stuff that you would never think that I would do. So last year, the college decided to no longer use its mechanics at the garage to drive the buses for the elementary school.
Okay.
That's a problem. So what happens is that the kids who go to Berry Elementary Middle School catch a bus at the cage, and the bus takes them.
The cage is the name of the gymnasium. It is not a literal cage.
Yes, it's not no cage fighting at Berry. That's not good.
The children are not kept in cages.
No,
like this is.
no. It's good correction. So they would catch the bus at the Cage Center, the athletic facility, and be bused to the mountain campus to the elementary school. Well, historically, that was the mechanics who would also drive the buses. Well, that's also taxing for them. So we had to do something about that. So Alan goes out and hires bus drivers. I don't know anything about hiring bus drivers. So the Child Development Center needed some padding under their playground. Thousands of dollars. So I go looking for money and try to find money, and they get some stuff installed. And they did they? I don't know if they installed it all correctly. So I'm always trying to solve problems. Like, well, then I got to figure out that did they not do what they were asked to do? I mean, it's always this random stuff that has nothing you'd ever think to do with being an academic dean. So even the best example is when I started this job, is when COVID was rampant, and we did all these things to make the elementary school, middle school work in the context of having COVID. Just things that I had no training. And I wasn't the only dean in that pickle.
Yeah.
I mean,
I know a dean that had to pick out furniture patterns or color patterns for the furniture. And I'm just like, why are you doing that?
I have a whole list of stuff that you never expect.
So when you were doing your visual neuroscience research in your lab, in your PhD program, you never thought you would be hiring bus drivers.
No. I wrote job ads for bus drivers. I wrote job ads for teachers. I have. Again, our school is so diverse with so many different kinds of staff. I've had to learn a lot of stuff, which is fine. But the good thing is it's like for every area of the college, my school, whether that's an academic department trying to hire faculty, whether it's trying to hire a director of a South Rome Early Learning Center, there's always some problem to solve. And people ask for help, and I feel good that I can help them get what they want. I don't always win. But 90% of my job is trying to go to bat for them to get with them what they want and help them problem solve and find solutions to things just happen.
Yeah. I think in hindsight, I wish we left a lot more time to explore what your role is like as dean, but let's just ask one question about that before we have to go. What was that transition like going from primarily a teaching faculty and researcher to being more of a fix everyone's problem administrator? How has that transition been for you?
It's not really been that challenging in the sense that I was also department chair rep before this. Okay. So I had my own other share of doing some of that. And I've also been involved on so many things on campus in terms of various task forces and administrative jobs like SACSCOC. I've done stuff with faculty assembly.
That's an accreditation organization. Okay.
Yeah. And I've just done so many little things like that. I've been solving problems for so long and being thrown some weird stuff so long. It wasn't really that much of a stretch. It's just what was difficult is let's pick on that dean you might know. In the mathematical and natural sciences, the school is pretty similar. In this school, it's very different. So we got 4 very different programs. You got 2 of those programs which have external accreditors. So teacher education is accredited by the Georgia Professional Standards Commission. It's this whole bag of wax of complexity. Our division of nursing is accredited by an outside accreditor. And so learning all of that and all of that minutia and how those 2 are very different systems. So then you have the lab schools, which I didn't know anything about. So it's really been, I think, a challenge just to learn and pick up on those things and how to govern in a way which is helping them. And thankfully, I had really good people, in those leadership roles below me that can do the job, and I can work with them. So it really wasn't that much. Okay. It was just more of it is what it amounted to.
But I love hearing your heart behind that, of how you view that role as a shield, as a protector, but as a deflecting flaming arrows.
That's true.
I appreciate that. We wish more managers and leaders had that attitude of caring for their people. All right. So Alan, final thoughts. What do you want to leave us with?
I don't, because I had no agenda.
Yeah.
I think it's,
that's kind of fun though, right?
Yeah. I don't like agenda. I think it's nice to just come in and just chat. So I don't really have any final. Unless there's something else you really want to know from me. Okay.
All right. Well, where can people find you?
Disney. Which no.
Are you active on LinkedIn or anywhere?
No Facebook account. I don't use LinkedIn.
Okay.
Never have.
Okay.
I am at Berry College constantly. I'm here if you want to find me.
If you want to find you, take a course that Dr. Hughes is offering.
No, I am always in the Cook Building, the main floor, in the administrative suite. I am here. I have been very thankful to be at Berry College. I think I like colleges. Here's my final thought. I like colleges with stories, and there's a lot of interesting colleges with cool histories. Interesting that they're very mission centric, and I think Berry is an unusual place, and I think a lot of people don't really understand. What I do like about Berry is from its board of trustees to its upper echelon administration, people really are very careful, very methodical, and make very judicious, thoughtful decisions in the best interest of the students. And you don't have a lot of places like that. So Berry's success has been in the people who work here. It's a really good place to work.
Nice.
No worries. So
nice. Awesome. All right. We are finishing part 2 of our conversation with Dr. Alan Hughes, neuroscientist, professor of psychology, and interim dean. Thank you, Alan. Thanks for hanging out with us. That was a lot of fun.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
All right, bye-bye. If you enjoy this podcast, please leave a review. Tell a friend. Give us a gold star. Or call my grandma. And if you want unforgettable events and training that's fun, like for real fun, get started today at workplaysolutions.com. I know I want that. Boo-boo-boo! So how are you doing that? I can't talk. My equipment is broken.
You should learn something today, right?
Yeah, I did.